Think Things Through, episode number 2. Welcome to episode number 2 of Think Things Through. Hi, my name is Clayton Craddock, and I am an independent thinker, father of 2 beautiful children here in New York City, and the drummer for the hit Broadway musical Ain't Too Proud. I'm also the publisher of the newsletter Think Things Through, and your host today on the Think Things Through podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about sexism. Sexism in the music industry, specifically sexism on Broadway, and even to dig deeper, sexism on Broadway musicals, and sexism as it relates to hiring people for Broadway musical drum chairs. You're like, how'd you get from point A to point F? Well, this is how it happened. A couple months ago, I was told about an Instagram post from an organization called Maestra Music. I think they do wonderful work. What they say in their bio, they say Maestra Music gives support, visibility, and community to the women who make the music in the musical theater industry. I think that's pretty damn good. They did have 3 posts that caught my eye. They were all posted on the same day, December 15th of 2020. The first post that I saw said from 2009 to 2020, only 4% of orchestrator jobs on Broadway were held by women. The second one that I saw that caught my eye said only 8% of new Broadway scores in the last 10 years were composed by women. Then the third one that really piqued my interest said, in the last 8 years, out of 98 available Broadway drum chairs, only 2 went to women. That's interesting. On that post, Maestra Music said, we have work to do. Donate to Maestra and let's fix this. I was curious as to what they were trying to fix. What is the goal? Is the goal to have half of all the drummers on Broadway be women? Is it even realistic to have 50% of all Broadway drum chairs being made up of women? After thinking it over, I decided to make a little comment to get a conversation started. I said, how many Asian men got drum chairs? I brought that up because, you know what, there are no Asian drummers on Broadway. Not that I know of, but then I started thinking about my own situation. There are only 2 black drummers on Broadway in 2020. That's me and Rocky Bryant. Over the past 10 years, there were only 6 black men, but there are no black women. Over the past 45 years or so, there's only been 14 black men that have held drum chairs on Broadway. That's a long time. Why is that? Could it be that people aren't exposed to certain positions in this business? Maybe people don't know about Broadway drumming. Maybe it's racism. Maybe it's sexism. Maybe it's a lack of opportunity. Maybe it's all 3. Or maybe it's something else. Who knows? If one of the goals of Maestra's posts was to get the conversation started, they succeeded. I saw several comments on the Maestra post about Broadway drumming. One of them said this, you're clearly implying this is as a result of sexism. Were there equal numbers of interested male and female candidates at the beginning of this process? Are there equal numbers of male and female drummers that exist in the world? What are the results of flute auditions conducted in the same time period? Is it possible that differences between sexes exist and that those differences lead to differences in interests and that those differences in interests lead to men and women populating different jobs as a corollary? Sexual discrimination is real and we can work on it, but it is unhelpful to the cause when we view the entire world through the lens of identity and find discrimination where it doesn't exist. I think that was a great comment, and we're going to expand on that in this podcast today. I think there's a lot more to this conversation than possible discrimination based on sex or even skin color. It seems to me that the implication here is sexism. Or maybe I'm just inferring it. I could be wrong. So I decided to actually talk to the two women that they were referencing in this Instagram post, Rosa Avila and Dena Tauriello. Two amazing drummers, two amazing women, and we're going to hear from them right here on the Think Things Through podcast.
Think about it.
Think about it. Think about it.
But without further ado, I'm going to present the conversation that I had with Dena Tauriello and Rosa Avila. Welcome to Think Things Through. This is Rosa Avila and Dena Tauriello.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks for having us.
I spoke to Dena. I spoke to you a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me about some of the things that you had to deal with when you were on tour with Antigone Rising. Could you tell me, both of you, when you want to speak, I just want to find out what were some of your encounters with sexism over the years?
So some of the thing, this is always, I always feel the need to preface all of these conversations because there's a fine line, I think, in truth telling and feeling like woe's me and, doom and gloom and whatever. And I don't mean it to be the latter. I'm going to just tell some stories, and whatever that means to you, I'm just going to share. So some of the things that we encountered, I remember distinctly rolling into a club in Atlanta. This was probably circa, 2002. And some random guy in the audience sees the female band coming in and he was like, "Oh, a female band." He's like, "What are you guys, like Josie and the Pussycats?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're a cartoon. That's exactly what we sound like." I'm like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, okay. Because there can't possibly be an all-female rock band, right? Another one, which is the story that I shared with you previously, Clayton. We had, been driving all day. And back in these days, we were touring like lunatics, like 265 shows a year, van and trailer, like driving all day, loading in our own gear, playing, like lunatics. And we did a similar day, a lot of driving, roll in for sound check. We're exhausted, we're hungry, we're thirsty. We asked the sound guy for some water, bottled water. And he was like, "No." And we're like, "Okay." So we set up, and, our lead singer looks at us and she's like, "Come on, let's bring it," So our sound checks, oftentimes turned into auditions, essentially. We had to prove ourselves before we even opened the doors to play the show. And we blew the doors off the place in sound check. And then the sound guy was like, "Oh, you guys need dinner? What do you need? Oh, here's some water. Here's some," he assumed, I interpreted that as he assumed that we were going to suck. So there's those two stories. And then most importantly, when after we'd gotten our record deal and we, recorded our record and we were getting ready to drop it, our label was making the rounds and talking to radio stations. And we literally were being told, this was 2005, we were literally being told, "Well, Sheryl Crow has a new single out this week. Gwen Stefani has a new single out this week. And you want us to add your single, and we can only add 2. So imagine, I want you to imagine whose song didn't get added that week. That's probably why you've never heard of Antigone Rising.
Wow.
So Sheryl Crow and Gwen Stefani made the cut. We did not. And that was part of the problem that we had breaking in. You don't sound like anybody. You don't, whatever. It's just a lot of stories like that, having to have full hair and makeup for everything we did and looking a certain way and, being asked to lose weight when we joined the record, when we got the record deal and, things that were not consistent with what the guys were doing. It was a double standard of sorts,
Wow.
So that's what I got. There
Amazing.
You go.
Yeah, we got too many of those. It's so many. I can talk about a couple of times where, I walk in and I'm sure Dena got this too. Like, are you, I'm with blah, blah, blah. Are you the singer? I'm like, are you the dancer? I'm like, do I look like a dancer? What? No, I'm the drummer. And they're like, and then they're like, what? Like, it's something out of Mars. Like, what? You play drums? I'm like, oh my God, really? That, all the time.
Or if you're carrying your own gear and they ask if your boyfriend plays
Are
drum.
you the girlfriend?
Yeah.
Really?
Then there's
Wow.
that one.
Where's your boyfriend? I'm like, no, this is my stuff. Or the obvious, like I'm carrying a cymbal bag and are you a drummer? No, I just carry it.
Because this is
No,
fun.
I just carry it. I just want to schlep this just because of the love of schlepping. I mean, and also like I would get like stuff like when you walk into a venue and with some bands where I, I'm the only, I'm the only girl in the band, the only woman in the band. And then the sound guy is just like, oh, here goes the girl. Oh, here comes a girl. Oh God, and just totally treating me like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm set up my drums and they're like setting up stuff and, like treating me like I have no idea. And then they figure out, oh no, she actually does know. And then I start playing. And then the attitude completely changed. Oh yeah, no, okay, whatever you want. That's a constant also. They assume that we suck and then we don't know what we're doing. No, I don't know how to tune my stuff, that kind of stuff. Constantly. And also the other one that I get besides, are you, the dancer or the singer is, are you the manager? Oh, I was like, no, I'm the drummer in the band. And then people just go nuts over that. Like they cannot believe, and this is happening now. This is nothing. I'm not talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about 5 years ago. Not
Wow.
even. This is the weird thing that we encounter to this day. We continually keep encountering this, and yeah, it's weird.
And then the other, the obvious things, which is ongoing are the qualifiers. You're good for a girl, you hit hard for a girl, that kind of stuff.
Oh, you can really play, and they're surprised. Wow, you can actually hit. Oh boy.
I had somebody at a gig once after the gig was over ask me how much I bench pressed.
Really?
Oh, I get even worse. They come and touch my bicep and my arm, my forearm. Come here. Like older guys, younger guys don't do that. The older generation do that. You have no idea how many times have like, oh, give me your arm, and then they touch my forearm.
What does the bench pressing have to do with anything?
What does physicality have to do with it? None. And zero.
No idea.
Strong or not.
Bizarre.
Yeah, we live with this and we just laugh about it because we lived with this. Imagine you guys living with this. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, I have a question about your background growing up. Did you have many? Did you know many female drummers growing up as a kid? And if so, are they still playing professionally?
When I was in school, I did, the school band stuff and up through my freshman year of high school. And when I was in middle school, my band director sent me for like an audition I was recommended for like North Jersey all area band select. And I don't know how many schools participated, but you got recommended and then you went and auditioned and then they placed you, first chair, second chair, whatever. And the year I went to, 7th and 8th grade, I was first chair both years. And there were two other girls, but they were percussionists. They were mallet players. They weren't, kit players. So it was me, those two girls and two guys. So it was kind of cool that we kind of like outnumbered them. The percussion section had it on the guys, but no, not in terms of kit players, traditional.
Yeah, no, me worse because I grew up as a teenager. I started playing in Mexico. So in Mexico, it's completely unheard of. I was completely shut down by everybody. Everybody thought, but first of all, but that's for boys. What are you talking about? You're going to play drums. I'm like, says who? And then I was like, oh, now I really want to do this. What is wrong with you? Who says the drums are for men? I mean, this is idiotic. It was completely idiotic. And my parents are musicians, so obviously they didn't think like that. They were classical musicians, so they were like, why drums? Said, oh boy, no, don't do that. But not in terms of gender, not at all. But I was constantly told like, but that's for boys. You can't play drums. You can't play drum set. Go play something else, And I had even a high school friend tell my dad, "You gonna let her do this?"
Let her?
Yeah, seriously. And my dad was like, she can do whatever the hell she wants, man. Well, I mean, it's first of all, I wasn't allowed to play drums when I really wanted it because my parents were classical musicians. I was like around 10 or 11 when I really wanted to play drums, and they shut me down for years. I begged, and I was allowed to start playing when I was 16. So how many kids beg from 10 to 16? It wasn't a fad. It wasn't going away. And my dad finally, after me begging constantly about it, said, well, okay, if I get your lessons, would you just shut up? I said, yes, this is what I want to do. And from the first day I sat behind a kit, not knowing anything, I thought, I'm home. That was it. I mean, it chose me. Somehow it chose me because I didn't know squat about the drum set. And I sat behind one when I was 16 and I was like, this is it. I'm home. It was very weird. But yeah, I didn't know anybody played drum set in my generation. No freaking way. In the 80s, not one that I know of. No way. I mean, no way. There was one classical percussionist that to this day she's pretty massive. She's actually the I think the conductor of a symphony now. I mean, she's amazing. That was the only one. She's a little bit older than me, so I knew of her, and that's it. And then there were in Mexico City, there were two percussionists, two like conga players. And that's it. There was no kid players at all. That came in the next generation. Luckily, now there's a bunch of Mexican drummer, female drummers here in New York even. But no, when I was growing up, not a one.
So why do you think there weren't very many young ladies playing drums? You know what I mean? Dena, I know you idolized Karen Carpenter and Rosa. I'm not sure if was there any women drummers that you looked up to and said, that's what I want to do because of her?
Sheila E. and Tara Lynn Carrington.
Aha.
Those were the two. Those were the only two, really. I mean, Tara Lynn, yeah, that was. And I found out later she's only like 2 years older than me. I'm like, what have I done with my life? I met her. I actually got to meet her like 3 years ago.
Wow.
And I was sure that she was at least 5 years older than me, like at least, right? At least. I mean, I know she started young, but I didn't realize she's only 2 years older than me. And so when she told me, and she asked me my age, and we were talking, and she saw my face of confusion, and she even said, "Wait, you thought I was much older, right?" I'm like, "Yes, you've been around forever." And we started laughing. It was hilarious. We've become pals since.
Speaking of Tara Lynn Carrington, when I was playing Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, there was a time where the band was playing as the people would come in because we would perform as if we were playing in a 1959 jazz club. So we were playing, and I saw there was a woman that was sitting down at the table right next to me, right to my left, like right next to my hi-hat. And that was Valerie Simpson, because she was saying hi to Shelton Beckton. And then this other woman comes in, and I'm sitting here trying to play. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. I'm like trying to groove. And then I see this woman. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, my God. That's Tara Lynn Carrington. That's Tara Lynn Carrington.
So nothing unnerving about that.
Oh, when in between songs, I was like, "You play drums, right?" I was like, "Oh no, she's sitting right
It
here."
is Tara Lynn. I have a story about that, about the Valerie Simpson thing. So I'm in a band called Shiro's, Monica Herzig's Shiro's, and we did a cover of "Ain't No Mountain," and that was written by Valerie. And Tara Lynn heard that recording, and actually the day that I met her, I was introduced to her, and she said, "Oh, you're Rosa. Oh, I know you. I've known you for a while. I've heard you on that record." I'm like, "What?" I almost freaked. I was like, "Wow, what?" She's like, "You sound amazing." I'm like, "What is happening? What is happening here?" So anyway, she sent that recording to Valerie, saying, like, "Yo, look, these women are doing your tune, and it's very cool the way they approach it." And then Valerie loved it and sent us an email saying, "Amazing." There's a quote on the album from Tara Lynn and from Valerie, because she was like, "Yeah, this is very interesting what you did with my song." I mean, amazing.
That's great.
I got another question for you. Do you know very many women drum teachers?
Just there was two at PIT. Maria Martinez, and the other one, good Lord, I forgot her name. But Maria is great. She's a great player, and she still teaches there. Actually, I think she still teaches at PIT. So that was it, too. In my entire life.
Yeah, no.
Really?
I mean, other than, players like us who, give lessons, and are into academia on that level. But as far as like growing up, I never saw any female instructors, for drum set. And then, my exposure in general is limited. I taught at a community college for a little while, and there were not many students, and certainly no other instructors, and things of that nature. So no, I don't see it. Back to your earlier question about why aren't there? I think a lot of it is visibility. I was lucky enough to know who Karen Carpenter was at a very young age, and I kind of was made aware of that. But I think when Rosa and I were coming up as youngsters, there wasn't that presence when we were young, and that's becoming more accessible now, obviously with social media and people having their own YouTube channels, and like they're everywhere. There's lots of them, but I feel like there's a disconnect between the kids who are playing and then those who move into a career in music. And maybe that's where there's some sort of a synapse that doesn't fire. Maybe they think it's too risky. Maybe they think that that's where the line gets drawn in the sand. Like, it's okay to play, but maybe it's not cool that I try to do this, for a living. I don't know. I don't know why.
Well, in general, as a musician, that's the thing, because, rich kids taking lessons, but how many really go and really do it because their parents are like, no, this is too risky. It's art, all that stuff. I mean, that happens already.
Totally.
And that happens also like in sport, even in sport, like when you see soccer is huge in women here in the States. And then there's only 10 professionals, right? And there's like, it's huge, but only at a certain level. So it's kind of like the same thing with music. You take lessons up to a certain point and that's it. The few that come through are very few.
When you were on the road in the past, did you encounter many women drummers out on the road?
I literally, the only female drummer that I saw at a gig was when we opened for the Bangles. So Debbie Peterson and I, that was it. Didn't see any other female drummers that I can recall. Actually, I'm lying. I'm sorry. Michelle Malone, who's a singer-songwriter from the Georgia area. She's bouncing back and forth between a couple of states, but Georgia originally, she had a female drummer for the majority of her touring years, and we crossed paths and did some shows together. So there was her band, and then we did a fly date in California around the time that our record was dropping, and she wasn't on the gig, but she came to the gig to see us play. Her name is Karen Tepperberg. She's a phenomenal drummer from Israel who was in the States at the time. She was working at the time, actually, she was touring with Jesse McCartney and did some work with the trumpet player, Chris Bodie. I don't know how to
Chris Bodie, yeah.
She was with him for a while, and she's phenomenal, but she came to the gig just to check it out, and she stuck around and wanted to talk to me, and we chatted and we became friends. And whenever she'd come through Jersey, I'd go see her, and we have a connection. So because she was great. So I find the few of us that there have been, and I think with female musicians in general, there's just a very inviting, welcoming community, and they want to kind of bring everybody in and be inclusive. Oh, Allison Miller and I crossed paths once on the road. We did a festival in Michigan. That was it. So now I'm official.
I never encountered anybody on the road. Not one.
Wow.
You got me beat, Dena. I never encountered.
Dena was like, "Wait, I have another one."
3.
Yeah, no. I had nothing. Not one. You have 3. I have absolutely none. Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for right now. This is part 1 of my 2-part conversation with Dena Tauriello and Rosa Avila. And in the second half of our conversation, I asked them about their journey into the world of Broadway drumming, how they got their gigs, about finding women subs, and what problems they had with recruitment and finding qualified candidates. Is sexism really holding them back from getting work on Broadway? And if so, in what ways? Are women reaching out to them for advice on what to do and how to get into the business? Should Broadway have half of the drum chairs be filled by women? And if so, why? Is equality the goal? Find out in the next episode of Think Things Through. Thank you for listening to the Think Things Through podcast. If you like what you heard, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a nice rating and review. Also, don't forget, you can subscribe to my Think Things Through newsletter at claytoncraddock.substack.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Clayton Craddock. Thanks.